I'm Vic Myers. Welcome to the Resistance. I've been trying for a while now to figure out how to talk about something that's been on my mind, and recent events, I think, finally pushed it up. What I want to say is that racism is a white people problem. A white people problem that others are forced to live with. As a white man, I've never had to be afraid of being pulled over by the cops. As a white father, I've never had to have that special talk with my kids about not looking wrong or saying the wrong thing to a cop for fear that they wouldn't come home again. I've never had to worry about being turned down for a mortgage because of the color of my skin or where to go jogging. Never had to worry that I could be scooped up by ICE just for looking like I might belong to the wrong group, even though I was born here. I've never committed the misdemeanor crime of selling cigarettes. But if I did, it wouldn't be a capital offense. These are things that people of color have to deal with every stinking day. These are things that white people allow, that white people cause. I think I'm finally ready to talk about it now because of the state that our country's in, the permission that Donald Trump has given for racist behavior, and the hope I recently felt when I saw the latest poll numbers. For reasons that never made sense to me, Donald Trump has gained support in nearly every demographic when he won his last election, including non-white communities. But now, recent polling suggests that just about everybody is finally seeing him for what he is. They're seeing his racism, and the racism emanating from this administration like stink from a skunk. And they're saying it's not okay. He's lost everything that he gained, and then some, among all these groups. Well, every group except one. That one group is white, non-college educated men, the last stronghold of Trump's race-based politics. Polling indicates that a majority of this group is still standing solidly behind Trump and his policies. Unfortunately for them, they're not going to be any better off under Trump's policies than anybody else. Maybe one day they'll realize that their racism isn't worth what they're losing. And maybe the rest of us will realize something too, that racism is a white people problem, and it's up to white people to solve it. It's up to white people to call it out among their coworkers, their friends, and their family. It's up to white people to be the loudest and proclaim that racism is no longer acceptable in American institutions. It's up to white people to make sure that we're not voting for the racists. Thanks for listening. Good day.
When we talk about racism, why do we only focus on racism from white people?
Because white people are the ones that created the whole structure of racism. Yeah. Prior to white people, prior to like the 1600s, there was no idea of race. The idea of race came from white people to use that to subjugate people of a darker caste.
Yeah.
I agree. That's why we focus on them. They're the ones who also created the whole system that we live in.
I feel like you ain't heard my point before.
That penalizes, discriminates against, oppresses, and ostracizes people of all other races.
No one's disputing what you said. I agree 100% what you're saying. What I was saying is...
But you were saying victimizing.
No.
And it's not a victim thing. And I hate that word as well.
But let me say my point before we leave it at that. We were kings before that.
Of course we were.
And I think, as a whole, we need to carry ourselves more higher than that. And
Absolutely.
that's my point. But I'm not saying it didn't happen.
To say that, it takes away from the whole work.
No, but we know.
No, to take that takes away from the work that the white people have done to create.
But we know they've done that.
No, we don't. You do and I do. Bare black people don't. Wait. Bare black people don't. There's not a lot of black people that are educated to our past and educated to what white people have done.
What is our past then?
Our past is kingsmanship. Our past is culture.
That's my point.
Our past is the Benin Kingdom, the Ashanti Kingdom,
richest
all them
person
places,
ever,
Mansa all of that.
We are all racist. Every single one of us who look like me, who are watching this video, we are racist. And let me explain what I mean by that, because if you would have told me that a few years ago, I would have come out of my corner swinging saying, no way, I am not. I have worked in the criminal justice system for decades, and I've seen the systemic racism there and fought against it. I have biracial children, and I have seen the way the world looks at my children who are of a minority race versus my children who look like me. And I would have said, no way. But here is the thing. The more I learn, the more I realize just how much I don't know. Because there are two types of racism. There's the kind of racism that comes from the hate in your heart, and I don't have that. I never have, and I suspect very many of you don't have it either. But there is another kind of racism that comes from ignorance, and that abounds in my life. Even me, who thought that I knew a lot about seeing systemic racism. But here's what I've learned. The more I learn, the more I realize how unintentionally racist I have been in so many things. And it is on us now, white people, to educate ourselves. We're never going to fully grasp what it means to live in a world where you are the minority and where the system has been set up for hundreds and hundreds of years to benefit people who look like me and to oppress people who look like my children. But we have got to educate ourselves. I'm going to start listing several books and documentaries that I've been watching to educate myself. And I hope any of you who really want this world to be a better place, we have got to start with the foundation that all men and women are created equal. And we have got to set new rules for how we move in this society if we're going to have that. I need to apologize to the friends, the clients, the people I interacted with for so many years, because I thought I wasn't racist, and I'm not, as far as the part that comes out of hate. But the part that is born from ignorance, I'm sorry, I should have done better, and I am learning. For those of you who are watching this who are minorities, please put your advice in the comments. Books, documentaries, movies, or just your life experiences. I want to learn, and I want to help others learn, because I don't want you or your children or my children to live in a world that is designed to fail them. Okay, so let's start this series of educating ourselves in order to make this world a better place. Go love your neighbor.
You can't be racist to white people. I repeat, you can't be racist to white people. And before you jump in the comments, breathe and actually listen. What you can be is prejudiced. You can stereotype white people. You can make jokes about white people. You can even insult white people. But racism isn't just hurt feelings. Racism is prejudice plus systemic power. Look at our history. Colonisation, the White Australia policy, the stolen generation, the ongoing over-representation of Aboriginal people in custody, the fact that political and corporate leadership is still overwhelmingly white. Those are structures. So a joke about smashing a meat pie in a Servo car park on a Saturday arvo, that's commentary. That's satire. That's cultural critique. It doesn't stop white people from getting jobs. It doesn't block them from getting housing. It doesn't make banks deny them loans. It doesn't criminalise their existence. Discomfort is not discrimination. If racism was just any mean comments about a race, then every group would experience racism equally. But the outcomes aren't equal. The power structures aren't equal. And pretending they are ignores history. Reverse racism isn't a real academic concept. Racism doesn't flip directions like an Uno card. It operates through systems. You can be offended. You can disagree. Hell, you can scroll. But calling structural analysis racism against white people waters down what racism actually is. And when we water it down, we make it harder to address real, systemic harm. That's the difference.
I'm just going to say it, right? If more people, more white people would stand up against racism, we could probably get it to damn near end, y'all. I'll stand up for it. I know racism isn't right, but I need more white people to jump on this train to help me take a stand against racism. There are white people out here, y'all, that's got people thinking that we are all racist when that is not what's going on. So we have got to put a message out to take a stand against racism. Like, I will start it off. I don't care. I will stand alone in it if I have to. But if you're a white person and you're with me on this, help me push the content out. There's only one way to do this, and it comes with just being in unison. That's the only way. There is power in numbers, y'all. I don't care if you're black, Mexican, Indian, Asian, whatever it is that your race, ethnicity is. You don't have to be white for me to like you. And everybody else that feels this way, I need you to get on this train right now.
People don't think they're racist because white people don't understand racism fundamentally. White people think that to be racist, you have to be out hate criming. You have to explicitly be saying you don't like XYZ minority group. You have to be saying you think white people are better. And this level of binary thinking is extremely comfortable for white people because most white people aren't out hate criming. Most racist people aren't out hate criming or explicitly saying they hate minority groups. It's a little bit more subtle for most racist people. Obviously, there are some people who do say that, but that is the exception, not the rule. This goes for both sides of the aisle. Like during the election, people kept saying, not everyone who voted for him is racist, but all the racist people did vote for him. Completely incorrect. Reverse that. Everyone who voted for him is racist. You cannot vote for that without being racist. However, not all racist people voted for him. And that is harmful to say because that perpetuates this narrative of like, or this trope of, I have a black friend, I can't be racist. I voted for Kamala Harris, I can't be racist. I vote for the people who support the minorities. I'm obviously not racist and I don't need to do any further work to prove that. Sophia Coppola is obviously conservative and conservative racism is a little bit more explicit, but they don't think it's wrong and they don't think they're racist because they know that racism is a bad word. That's bad. And racism is wrong. So I'm not racist. I don't hate minority groups. I just don't think that inequality is an issue. I just don't think it's wrong. I just don't think microaggressions exist, right? That's not racist. That's just how they frame their world, and that's comfortable for them. And if there's anything white people cannot give up, it's comfort. Do not make white people uncomfortable. Oh my God. Oh my God. And that goes for the left too. I personally have to work every single day to deconstruct systemic racism within myself, within the people around me, within the world that I exist in the context, right? And I have to be constantly thinking about that because racism is so deeply embedded in our society, in our psyches. But a lot of white people on the left don't feel the need to do that because they're doing their part. They're not voting for racism, so they're not racist. If they don't learn about microaggressions, then they don't have to acknowledge that they exist and they don't have to call themselves or their friends out for doing them, right? If they call people out for saying the M word, if they go, hey, don't say that, that's doing their part. It would be really uncomfortable for them to have to learn about the way that white supremacy exists in our society. And they don't want to be uncomfortable. Don't make them uncomfortable. Don't fight white supremacy. They're going to hate it. And this isn't an excuse at all, but this binary view of racism isn't helpful and it's not productive to think that like everyone who's racist knows it and says like, I hate minorities. It almost views it in the same lens that they view it. Racism is never okay on any level, but it isn't a binary thing. It's not lacking in nuance. Like there is a lot of nuance. There's no justification, but there are different types of racists. There are different understandings of racism, and to not acknowledge that does us all a disservice.
This is why people don't trust white people, because it is peak whiteness and colonizer behavior to demand civility for a man who denies others their humanity. That's the oppressor, and we do not need to sympathize or empathize with them. And don't get me wrong, because I long for a world where there is no violence in it. But until all of us are free, none of us are free, and violence is part of the equation because of the oppressor, not the oppressed. We need to understand that violence comes in many forms, and white people need to learn it most of all. And if none of that is enough to convince you, then how about the fact that Charlie Kirk said empathy is a made-up new age word that does harm, and that is the one directive of his that I am willing to honor.
Is anyone going to call out the despicable and very obvious growth of anti-white racism now being accepted as normal in the British mainstream media? If you think I'm exaggerating, I want to look at 3 egregious examples from the past 48 hours alone. First, Wilfred Emmanuel Jones went on Sly News Saturday evening, where while previewing the amazing feat of our Lionesses making the World Cup final, he decided to turn the discussion of this Sunday Mirror front page into a debate about the ethnic makeup of the team. Watch.
The only thing I would say about this picture here, what jumps out of you is that this doesn't sort of represent diverse Britain. It's all these blonde, blue-eyed girls, and, you know, I wish them well, but I do think we need to ask ourselves questions about why is it that we've got, it has a lack of diversity.
They're playing sport at an elite level.
Yeah.
And they are from Britain. And they're women.
It doesn't make any difference. I think if the whole idea behind this is going to encourage more women to go and into the sport, you need some sort of representation there to say, whatever background you come from, you could get to this sort of level.
Because
Britain doesn't look like that.
Yeah,
But it
and it's
doesn't.
so important when you speak to these little girls that they see someone that they can relate to.
Exactly. It makes such a difference. That little girl might then end up playing football because she's seen someone who looks like her.
Just imagine if that scenario were reversed with any other sporting team that might feature a different ethnic makeup. Some of them are there. It just wouldn't happen, nor should it. We have lost all sense of rationality if national selectors are thinking about race before ability. By the way, as GB News contributor Rafe Haydel-Manku pointed out over the weekend, according to the 2021 census, England is 4.2% black. 13% of the Lionesses are black, 3 players out of the 23-member squad. So actually, that's 3 times more than the population, which I would say is more than representative. As social commentator Konstantin Kisin wrote about this,
is what happens when you tolerate, encourage and incentivize race baiting in the media. This is why the diversity agenda needs to be dismantled brick by brick. It stopped being about fairness a long time ago. It's just a new form of racism now.
Is it any wonder these conversations are taking place in the media on a regular basis when London's failed mayor, Sadiq Khan, is caught out having equally discriminatory conversations? So this weekend, his team was exposed for warning against the use of a picture of a white family. They annotated that image with the note, "Doesn't represent real Londoners." So if you're a white family, Mr. Khan's team doesn't think you are real. I'm sorry, I'm going to call that out for what it is. Racism. Perhaps the biggest sickener, though, was race baiter-in-chief Dr. Scholler, deciding to make the conviction of Britain's most prolific child killer in modern history, Lucy Letby, who today we learned will rightly die in prison, an issue of race. The regular on Woke ITV and Channel 5 tweeted this.
Lucy Letby exemplifies how ideology of whiteness keeps Britain in a chokehold. They believed her tears, denials, even though evidence said otherwise for no other reason than she's white. A black or brown nurse would have been reported to the police immediately and sacked for suspicion.
As usual, Dr. Scholler has absolutely zero evidence for that. But she lives in a world of hatred and division, using identity politics to tear Britain apart. So too does Khan. I don't know about you, and I know I'll be called racist for doing so, but I'm going to start calling out this anti-white racism the same way as I call out all other forms of discrimination.
Now, we often hear about reverse racism now.
There's no such thing as reverse racism.
There's no such thing as reverse racism. You can only be a racist if you have the power to institutionalize what you're doing to people who are different from you. What we're calling reverse racism is natural reaction to being treated unfairly on the basis of somebody else's ignorance. Now, don't ever let anybody say to you or about anyone around you that people don't like that person because of the color of their skin. That isn't the reason white people don't like people of color. They don't like people of color because they don't understand about skin color. And they don't understand that we all are descendants of somebody who looked like your mother. And it's time to change the White House to the President's house. This is ridiculous to call the place where the President of the United States lives the White House. It sends the wrong message. It says, I remember when Richard Nixon said to a group of reporters, I'm trying to save the White House for you white people. That says it all. And at that moment I thought, well, wait a minute. Now this is something that has to be changed, and it has to be changed. Nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. It's time to change the name of the White House to the President's house or the President's residence, which has a nice ring to it, don't you think? Oh, I'm going to get lots of angry responses to that one. And I understand that. But I'm reading a book right now. Everybody that's watching this has to read this book on tyranny. 20 things that we've learned over the last 100 years in this country that have put us in the position we're in now and what we can do about it. Everybody has to read this book. They should read this book first, and then they should read The Myth of Race by Robert Wald Sussman. And once you've read The Myth of Race, you will never, ever again go along with the idea that there are 3 or 4 or 5 different races. It was a lie made up by the people who ran the Spanish Inquisition. And before that, there were different colors, but race had nothing to do. There was only one race, the human race. We made that whole thing up. It's time to get rid of it. We have the power to do that. This country got ready for World War II in about 6 months. And you're telling me that we can't destroy racism? White people created racism. Anything you create, you can destroy. God created human beings, the human race, and they started out black women. White people created racism. Human beings created racism. It's time to get over it.
Elliot. Today, most urban sectors, especially Milwaukee, remains hyper-segregated. Why is it taking so long, or why doesn't it seem like we can move the button on diversity in neighborhoods?
Because the people who have the power in this country are the people who have the money. And the people who have the money are going to decide where people live. You need to realize that there are more children attending segregated schools in the United States today than there were previous to Brown versus Board of Education. And that's a fact. You need to realize that it is not the intent of white people to let this situation change in favor of anyone but themselves. And right now, white people are really frightened. If you don't understand the destruction of Planned Parenthood offices, and you don't understand the wall that we're going to build on the southern border of the United States, you haven't read the book The Birth Dearth by Ben Wattenberg. Ben Wattenberg was a brilliant Jewish man who was a member of the American Enterprise Institute. And he wrote a book, the first paragraph of which says, the main problem confronting the United States today is there aren't enough white babies being born in this country. He was an advisor to presidents of the United States. He wrote the book in 1987. He says if we don't change this and change it rapidly, white people will lose their numerical majority in this country, and this will no longer be a white man's land. Now, I'm not misrepresenting this. I'm telling you almost exactly what he says. He says there are 3 things we can do to solve this. Number 1, we could pay women to have babies, as they have been doing in Western European nations for years. Then he says, and these are his words, not mine, unfortunately, we would have to pay women of all colors to have babies, so we don't want to do that. He says the second thing we could do is increase the number of legal immigrants that are allowed into this country every year. Then once again he says, unfortunately, the vast majority of those wanting to come to this country today are people of color, so we don't want to do that. The third thing he says, and women had better pay attention to this, 60% of the fetuses that are aborted every year are white. If we could keep that 60% alive, that would solve our birth dearth. Does that sound like racism to you? And if it doesn't, I want to know why it doesn't. If it doesn't, you don't understand what racism is. And I think it does.
Right. A lot of people don't understand the trauma associated with race and racism. Can you talk a little bit about the trauma associated with?
The trauma associated with it? Yeah. One of the main traumas It tells white people that they are superior because of the lack of melanin in their skin. And then they find out suddenly that we've got a black president. That's traumatic. That's where the trauma is. Living a lie, finding out the truth is traumatic. Finding out now, recently, that within 30 years, white people will be in the numerical minority in this country is going to be traumatic. And that's the reason we have to solve this problem, and we have to solve it now. I will ask folks tonight, how many of you black folks want to get even with all white people? And that's what white people are quite certain blacks are going to want to do, is get even with all white people. And nobody will raise their hand. And then I'll say, how many of you want to get even with one or two? Every hand will go up, and you know why, and so do I. White people are scared to death right now, particularly white males. They're scared to death that they are going to lose their power in the future. And they are. But if you want to get ready for the future, if you want to be treated well in the future, treat others well in the present. What we do in the present constructs the future. What we have done in the past, we can learn from that. And we'd better learn from that. Those who forget the mistakes of the past are doomed to repeat them. And when you read this book, you'll realize that that's exactly what we're doing. We're repeating the mistakes that we have made in the past because we aren't teaching about these mistakes in the present. We are not teaching history that is true. We aren't teaching social studies that is true. We aren't even teaching true geography, for God's sake.
When we hear, when I hear people say that they're not racist and things like that, and we talk about building racial harmony in this country, I don't think I'll see it in my lifetime. Can you predict in the near future or far future when we will ever have racial harmony?
Oh yeah, in 30 years, white people will have found out that they have no choice but to get along with those who are different from themselves. I'm not willing. I'd love to wait, but I can't. At my age, I'm not going to be here in 30 years. But we could change this situation if we chose to. During the Second World War, we called the Japanese, and you'll pardon me, but this is what we called them: slant-eyed little yellow. We didn't say that about the Germans. After the war, we rebuilt Germany and Japan, and we get along beautifully with the Japanese. That was in 1945 that we finally won that war. How many years ago was that? Figure that out quickly.
I'm not a math person, but
you're not a math person, but you know it wasn't that far. Right. And it didn't take 50 years for us to have peace with the Japanese and the Germans, even though we dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. The Japanese hadn't killed 10 million people. Nowhere near that. We didn't drop any bombs on Germany, any atomic bombs on Germany. They were a different kind of people. We couldn't afford to do that. We killed how many Japanese people with 2 atomic bombs? And they forgave us. You want to talk about forgiveness? You want to talk about changing this thing? I cannot understand how Japanese people can stand the sight of any of us, and yet they do. I cannot understand why black people who have been subjected to the ugliness that they've been subjected to in this country can get up every morning and go to work among us and not be absolutely furious. And I don't understand why we allow white people to behave the way they do. I don't understand that. And my 3rd graders, after they'd gone through the exercise, couldn't understand it and wouldn't tolerate it. And when they went up to junior high, and a junior high teacher used the N-word, one of my former students said, if you're going to use that word, I'm going to go out in the hall until you stop using it, because we don't use that word in this school. That was a 7th grader who told his teacher off. When we have enough students who are willing to confront people who are making racist, sexist, ageist, homophobic statements, we're going to be better off. We have got to stop tolerating the intolerable. If it's intolerable for my black cousins, and every black person on this earth is one of my cousins, if it's intolerable for them, it's intolerable for me. I will not tolerate it. I will not tolerate it. I am required not to tolerate that kind of treatment for the people who are related to me. And that's every person on the face of the earth. If your ignorance is such that you'll mistreat somebody because of your ignorance about the color of their skin, don't do it around me. Number 1, I've been threatened with death lots of times. Now I say, go for it, fool. My husband died 4 years ago. Being with him would not be a bad thing for me. Death is not the worst thing that can happen to you. Living a worthless, useless life is much worse than dying.
I've never felt unsafe in black spaces. This is how we know reverse racism is a lie. I went to college on Long Island, and I lived in Hempstead, New York. Very black town. I used to go to Caribbean night at my local bar. Never had a problem. Never felt unsafe. I was just at a barbecue joint in Harlem the other week with a group of white girlfriends, lily white girls. We felt completely welcome, delightful. Had a great meal, super fun time. My boyfriend and I accidentally wandered into a hookah lounge one day. We were just looking for a burger. It was kind of late. It was like 10 o'clock. And we were like, oh, that place is open. Let's go in there. We go in, the place is empty. We were like, oh gosh, are you guys closing soon? The bartender was like, oh no, like we don't get busy till like 11 or 12 at night. It's a black hookah lounge. Completely black staff. They took care of us. We had a fucking great time. Great burger, great service, laughs, fun music. Never once did anybody give me a stink eye or a dirty look or make me feel like I didn't belong in those spaces. Never once was I concerned for my safety. But I was on the national tour of a children's show called The Olympic Spirit. And this show was about Jesse Owens being in the Olympics, who of course was a black athlete. So we had a black actor in the cast portraying Jesse Owens. And we toured the Deep South, baby. I'm talking about Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi. And it was a bus and truck tour. It wasn't fancy Broadway stuff. We played schools. So one night our van pulls into this local rest stop. It was like Pete's Chicken. And it had a gas station, which we needed gas. And Jamal and I walk into Pete's Chicken to get a little snack and to use the restroom because we were on the road. And when I tell you, every white face in that place whipped around and looked at us when we walked in together. Now, we weren't together. We were just two friends, colleagues. But he was black and I was white. And I felt the hairs stand up on the back of my neck. And I know he felt it too, because I looked over at him and I was like, this feels off. This feels weird. What's happening? And he goes, yep, let's go. I don't want to get lynched here. So we left. We just turned around, whoop, and walked right out. Got in our van and drove off because we felt unsafe in a white space. The only time in my life I have felt unsafe was in a white space because they identified me in proximity to a black man and they did not like it, and I felt it in my bones. That was a formative experience for me, and it's why I like to talk about black history in these United States, because it's not ancient history. It is still very much alive.
Tell you what I understand racism to be. Racism is a behavior system that is organized because white people are a minority on the planet. They are a tiny minority of the world's people. The black, brown, red, and yellow people are the world majority. Not only that, white people are genetic recessive in terms of skin coloration. You see somebody like whose skin is white, if they have sexual relations with a black person, the product is colored. And there is the fear of white genetic annihilation. It existed in Europe, it existed in Germany, it exists here today. If we understand the white fear of genetic annihilation, which was why Willie Horton could be used as a very profound symbol by the Republican Party to limit the